Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Studio 78 podcast. I am your host, Nache from NacheSnow.com. Welcome, 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 people. You can find the show notes for this page over at NacheSnow.com/138. So excited to introduce you guys to Kelsie McNair, who is a stained glass designer. And for those who follow me on social media and who listen to the podcast, you guys know that I started dabbling into stained glass myself this year. So I really wanted to get a stained glass artist on before the end of this season. And when I looked at all the people that I was following on my Creative Route IG account, I really wanted her. Like, she was the one that stood out. I just liked her vibe. I liked her style, all the things. And so I was so happy when she agreed to come on to the podcast and just share her story. There were so many things to dig into, so I had to stay focused. And we really just go into the art of stained glass. At the beginning of the episode, we talk a little bit about mental health, and then we go into her process, how she had to figure out her creative language, how she brought in marketing skills from her past job and also from running other businesses in order to promote her business. We talk a little bit about her process, how she had to think through pricing, and then her studio setup. So there are some things in here that are very specific to stained glass. So people who are looking to get into that will love it. But then there are also other things that will impact any business or any creative. You can learn about how to make decisions for your business through how she went through her either development or marketing process. So I think you guys will really, really enjoy all the things, especially if you love listening to creatives. Okay, so before we get started, head on over to NacheSnow.com. And in particular, I want you guys to head on over to NacheSnow.com/Notion, because if you're not organized, you have sticky notes everywhere, journals everywhere, things in Google Sheets, things in Asana, things in this and that, you might want to consider Notion to organize all the things from content creation to your favorite movies to maybe apartments that you're looking for, to all the things. I mean, every single thing you can think of, you can actually organize in Notion. So check out my free template, check out my video on how I talk about how I've organized my life and my side hustle using Notion, NacheSnow.com/Notion. And of course, if you love this episode, if you're on Apple Podcasts, please just open your app really quick and rate me 5 stars. I greatly appreciate it. You're listening on YouTube, hit that little thumbs up button. But wherever you're listening to, please subscribe. And as always, sharing is caring, my friends. So if you know someone who is an artist, in particular, even a stained glass artist, and they are trying to figure out how to monetize their business, have them have a listen to this episode. I think they will leave inspired. Okay, I'm just going to jump right into this. Let's go. Hello, Kelsie, and welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so excited to have you on. So it's interesting this year, my first kind of foray out into the world, I decided to sign up for a stained glass class.
Ooh.
And so, yes, so on one of my Instagram accounts, the Creative Route account, I followed every amazing stained glass artist out there, and you were one of them. And so I love your work, and I'm so glad to have you on. But even before we dive into what you do now, can you just tell the listeners just a little bit about you?
Sure. I'm Kelsie McNair. I live in Crown Heights in Brooklyn, New York. I was a full-time social media content specialist manager for a really fantastic traveling craft fair for the past several years, few years. And COVID took the job away because it's an event program. So that was wiped out of my life last year, and I was kind of left being like, what should I do? I have owned a lot of small businesses in my time, in my adult time, and working for that craft fair was my first like official 9-ish to 5 job. So after, that was swooped away from COVID pandemic, I was left wondering what the heck I should do. And the universe was like, listen, you know how to do this, not stained glass, but you know how to run little businesses. And I just happened to be doing stained glass in the past couple of years as like a thing I really loved. So I picked it up and I threw myself at it in a large way. And I've been an educator for a few years on and off, like while I was working my full time. And now I'm a full-time educator and stained glass artist designer. And I make things and I sell them on the internet. And that's pretty much, it is for the most part pretty joyful and quiet, and it's like a form of meditation for me.
Wow. So it's interesting. I actually was on a Zoom call with a friend from Cali yesterday, and she lost her job right at the height of the pandemic too, and she's still trying to figure out what's next. And she was even brainstorming about how she would execute it. So for you, like when that happened for you, because a lot of people have that thing that they love, but maybe they really didn't focus full time on monetizing it.
Yeah.
So how did you go from like having this like little thing on the side to, okay, I need this to help pay for my bills?
Yeah, like I said, I've owned small businesses before. When I graduated from college, I started a vintage shop in my hometown, Norfolk, Virginia. It was called With Lavender and Lace, and it was a full-blown brick and mortar store. And I had that for 4 years, and I had no idea what I was doing. So I had to learn every step. And that educated me in a really authentic way, because I was desperate to know each element while it was happening, while it was unfolding, while licenses had to be made, while like contracts and wholesale and, dealing with clients, and also just like running the store and all those things. So I learned all this stuff that I had no idea. I didn't study business or anything. So when I lost my craft fair job, I was just like, okay, I would never have come to New York with just doing my own artwork, because it's so expensive here. Why would I run myself into the ground? Because being a creative is working all the hours that are available, not just the few or the many that are expected, but you become the expectations are on yourself from yourself. And I have exceedingly high expectations on myself, as I continuously found through my life. So yeah, when I lost the job, I kind of flailed for a month. It's mostly like the identity that you associate with being a part of a team. This was my first full-time job, and I got it when I was like 28, 9. So I had not had like a sense of community like that before, and it was really hard to lose it. Also, it was such a stressful time for the company, for all of us working remote. I was in social media, so I was running during like the heightened worst time ever to be a social media manager. Like last year during George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, and running a social media account for a company that has like over 200,000 people and has like a 20-year history of dealing with people. And it's so tough. It was probably one of the most stressful times of my life. And I don't say that lightly. Eventually they had to let us all go and furlough us. And I was just so burnt and sad. And, who am I without this thing I've been giving all my energy to? So as soon as I lost my job, I packed up my studio. I was in Virginia staying with my mom, just because like when it went down, her and my sister are my only family. So not my only family, but they're the closest to me. And I went down straight to Virginia because my mom lives alone. And I just all of a sudden was like, it was very clear. Like the only thing that was important was like keeping her safe. So just like kept my apartment here. I was living in the Bronx at the time. And I got rid of my studio and moved everything into my mom's garage. in like August
Mm.
last year. So I like drove everything back down to Virginia and was just like tinkering in the garage for a month. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to make? What am I going to do? And I had been working in stained glass. It's like a brutal process. There are so many elements. It takes forever,
Mhm.
but the material is expensive and you can charge real money for it. I was like, I got to figure out how to do this. What does my work look like if I'm thinking about producing work in order for people to put it in their homes? Because up until
Mm.
that point, I was just making things because I was like, ooh, it would be fun to make a 3D shaped fruit and just see if it stands on its own. I was just like making stuff.
Right.
I need a place to propagate a little plant. So and then I'd create a shape for that. So yeah, I just dove in and I made a couple designs of like mirrors and like small things. And I just decided to take a bunch of pictures and do what I know how to do the best, which is marketing, just from years of owning the shops and other small businesses. So I just made a bunch of things, took a bunch of pictures, and started Soft Shapes, which is the company or brand or whatever, the project. I'm gonna call it a project that I'm doing now. And October 30th is when I like launched it,
Mm.
and I've sold like 180 things since then, and
Wow.
small things to big things. And so it's like some parts of the pandemic time, like during the holidays, like I was literally not doing anything else. Like I was bleeding fingers, there was glass everywhere. I was like so hyper focused because for like once in my life during a really crazy transitional time of fear and stress and what's going to happen, the glass
Mhm.
became something that I could depend on because I could see that every time I make a batch of something, I'd then post it and people would buy them. And so I could expect that these things would sell. And I knew that was also a transient moment because I've gone through fads before where I'll make an item and people buy it up and gobble it for a minute and then it loses its power. So while some
Mhm.
objects were hot, I was going in on it. And I yeah, that was kind of how I pivoted. I was also going through a breakup at the time. So there's a
Mm.
lot of just like transition space of me just making things with my hands, looking at color constantly and just being like, this is just going to be in someone's house. And also, it's not going to be garbage at any point. These works are going to outlive us, which is like really
Mhm.
fascinating. Like, they have the potential to be like heirloom items if you take care of them. Like, they're special, like jewelry for your house.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
That's, that's a little bit of the spiel.
I love that you were able to push through because I feel like last year, I mean, with the breakup, with COVID, with the social justice movement, with the job loss, like, number one, I can't even imagine all of those things happening at the same time. So that's like a lot of different types of emotions to deal with.
It was, but in the face of like people losing people, they all
Yeah.
felt relatively small. And
Mm.
the breakup is really hard. Losing your job super hard. But because I had like my mom and she was
Mm-hmm.
like I felt sad, but I don't know. I felt fine. I
Mm.
felt
Mm.
fine until this January I actually got COVID. A
Ooh.
roommate, a roommate brought it home this year. And so I got sick then. And that was awful. And I know people are like, it was whatever for them, but it was not great for me.
Mm.
I went through the 2 weeks of being like super ill and dealing with so much shame and stress that like I could have given it to someone because I was working part time in the social distance safety space at a lamp store, but I could have gotten all those people sick potentially. And I had seen my
Yeah.
a few weeks earlier. So there was just like so many emotional brain pain things. And then after I finally got like better, I had this like crazy weird psychosis moment that happened about 9 days after I was feeling better and my symptoms had all gone away and I hadn't had a
Mm-hmm.
fever in a long time. But I just lost my mind. Like I didn't know what was real. I had these three scenarios that I was playing on repeat that like weren't real but felt real, and I was like convinced that everyone was lying to me. It was crazy. And I
Mm.
thought at that point that the year had just broken me. I was just like, okay, well, these things happened. Big
Mhm.
change, job, worried about your family and their survival. Are we
Mhm.
be able to get food? There was like so many little and huge things that you're thinking about, and you're just on like high alert all the time. I was like, maybe I just cracked open like a freaking fried egg. But after I saw a couple doctors, I got on some medicine and like gratefully had resources to get myself out of it. But it was not me at all. And I thought that it was just a thing that I was moving through. And eventually I saw a New York Times article and a podcast episode. The Daily had an episode about a guy who suffered some psychosis after COVID. And it was the first time that I was like, oh my God,
Mm.
it was actual
Mhm.
like, inflammation in my brain. It was inflammation
Mm.
in my brain. COVID created inflammation in my brain, and I became like my own. I was a terrorist in my head. Like it was just, it was
Mm.
nuts.
That's
And
scary. Yeah.
I've also not known anyone to have gone through anything like that. So I felt like it was maybe all the things that you said that were really heavy and hard had just
Mhm.
compounded. But now I don't know. I mean, I'll never know, right?
Right. That's
Like
true.
I'm just glad that it's over. And
Right.
I luckily had the resources and the knowledge of my own well-being that like something is not right in a way that is
Mhm.
not normal for me. Anyways, I don't know what the question was, but I feel like that was a
Ah,
very
no. That's no. You answered the question. And thank you for sharing that because I think talking about mental health is important because sometimes people keep it to themselves and don't talk to others. And so it's important for us to talk about it so people know like it's nothing to be ashamed of. And if you need help, like you should ask for help, you
yeah.
know?
Like there's
So,
nothing worse than being trapped in your own mind.
yeah.
Like people like you can't survive. You cannot survive when you're making up all this shit and it's not real. Like ugh, it's nuts.
Yeah.
I'm so lucky to have like I've been raised by people who are like they talk their emotions. So I have practice in the art of understanding those psycho storms, that come through. But it makes me frustrated and sad when I'm watching someone go through something and I'm like, oh my God, like you gotta get help or you gotta figure it out or
Yeah.
step outside of the systems in which you have in place to try and heal.
Mhm.
It's just like
Yeah.
help yourself. Just find someone else.
So yeah, so I have to pick your brain on all things stained glass
Oh yeah.
because yes. So for the nerds out there that are stained glass nerds, because I know I have some listeners out there that are into stained glass. So do you do copper foil or lead or both?
I'm actually in a like 6 week intensive for lead, which I have not really done. I have done some lead work. It has not been my main thing, and I have felt a little nervous about it. So I've been doing copper foil or the Tiffany stained glass method mostly since I started, which
Mm.
is more like you puzzle piece things together and then you tape them with a foil, and then that foil plus a chemical creates a chemical reaction with the solder. That's my main jam. And the reason I took this class is because if I want to make bigger things, there are some structural integrity things that arise with copper foil. If you're making something really big, sometimes you have to add in some things to help with the weight if you're going to hang it.
Mhm.
I wanted to like see if maybe doing lead things was going to be a safer bet for me. I'm making something for myself and it's rather large and I'm pretty intimidated
Mm.
by it. And I have 2 more weeks in the class, so we'll see how that works.
It's interesting. I took a lead class recently. I don't know, like I'm in a copper foil class again, like my second one now. There's something that I love about copper foil over lead,
Yeah.
but I do like the clean lines of lead, right? Because everything is so
Yeah.
perfect and
Yeah.
straight. But
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
messier a little bit. Like at the
It's
end.
dirty.
Yeah.
It's really dirty, but I have there's a little bit more leeway, I guess, with the lead because the lead's like got the channel, so there's a little bit more space to not have the best cuts. But I happen to be in a class with a teacher who's every piece of glass that I cut needs to fit exactly in my template, which like for what I'm making things that don't really have super constrained outlines. I'm not
Mm.
making things that are rectangle or square, right? And if I am, and there's like gaps in the middle, I'll just fill that with solder. I don't care. I have no shame.
You're like, and it's done.
You know,
Right.
but like you can't do that with Came. Everything has to fit together, and it's really intimidating. Ugh.
Yeah. No. And then like with that too, so for you, are you mainly focusing on like having like creating pieces for people's homes, or do you also create artwork and enter art shows? Because it's interesting thing about stained glass is like, there's so many things you could do. You could do home decor, you could do jewelry, you could do large pieces of art that end up in like a hotel or a museum. So kind of what spaces do you operate in?
Well, right now, because I have a really large room that I've sort of sectioned off. I have my studio in my room, which is still about 20 feet from here. So it's enough space. And I also have like really well ventilated things and also like a fume box. And I do it as safe as I can. But because of my size, the size of the room, and like Instagram is my main source of selling,
Mm,
like that's
mm.
where I am finding the people to buy my product. So I'm thinking about the type of people that are watching me and trying to just make things mostly for me that I like that other people will pick up and want in their home. So I'm thinking more homes at this moment. I would like to be making like larger things. It's just about finding the right people because there also has to be some element if people want stuff in their homes that they're like commissioning. There has to be some element of
Mm.
creativity on their part. But I have made a couple like really cool commissions for folks. I'd like to do a couple more of those and just keep finding clients or customers who just like are vibing with what I'm creating. So like for a while the mirror portals were doing really well, and now I'm trying out some other shapes that are like nebulous looking clouds that are mid-century modern. Like I'm going to do some flowers, and like I'm doing these sculptural fruit things that I
Oh,
just
pretty.
like I don't know why, but they're just really cute. I might try and make them like an incense holder. So like a little
Mm.
incense in it, even though the ash will get everywhere. But yeah, it's me just making objects that I haven't seen, which is also a huge challenge in stained glass because
Hmm.
everyone's got their style and I'm not an illustrator. So I have to figure out how to create the visual language that I, as an artist and as a creative, use in stained glass when there is already so many languages.
Mm.
So creating objects that are like just a little bit further in the direction that is specific to me is any creative. If you're a painter, like figuring out all the ways that you paint and all the things that you're referencing, like this is the same. I just have to create and carve my own path because there are still so few stained glass artists, but like it
Hmm.
was very hard to do something authentic and new, you know?
Yeah. It is true.
It's
But what I will say when people go to, because of course I'll have like links to your Instagram. When I follow like a whole bunch of stained glass artists, and you're right, there wasn't like a ton like you would find for like watercolor artists or
yeah.
some other type of medium. So that was like interesting. Even though I feel like stained glass is like on the rise though.
Oh, 100%. I feel really
Right?
lucky to have already been kind of good at it right when I finished like my work or work finished with me, whatever. Because I was like, all right, it's the first material I could potentially live off of, which I have made so many things in my time on this planet. And there's something so fantastic and whimsical about the glass. People don't
Yeah.
understand it. It's intimidating. It like the light, the shape, the danger of it all. It's just
All
like,
of it. Yeah.
it, it's a theatrical material.
Oh my God, people don't get. I like literally still have cuts on my fingers from a class I took a week ago.
Yeah,
I
girl,
was
like
like,
they're
oh
so
my
gnarly.
God.
There's just like constant.
It's like,
So I buy there's a Band-Aid company, I think it's called Wella. I don't know, but they have cute Band-Aids and they're at Target or something. And they
oh
have like
yeah,
all
yeah.
patterns. I buy like boxes of those and have them all around my life. And like some days I'll have like 7 of them on my hands. And it was really hard at the height of the pandemic when we're like sanitizing our hands all the time. I'm just like, oh my God, there's so many burns.
You can feel every little cut. I know. I was like, maybe I should buy. I see some people wear those little, I don't know, things that go on like your fingertips. I'm like, oh my goodness, I need all the tricks because I'm like, I have cuts everywhere.
Well, I'll suggest that if you just are prone to getting little cuts, get yourself some nitrile gloves and use nitrile like almost the whole time. Like I feel like it's impossible to glove while you're like foiling because you need, all the tiny intricacies of your nails and stuff, which foiling weirdly does a lot of scratch, probably because when you're folding the foil over on top of itself, sometimes there'll be like those points. But yeah, if I had a particularly rough week and have just so many little burns and stuff or cuts, I'll wear just nitrile the whole way. And that it really does. I can dig through boxes and not get any scratches.
Ooh, that's a good tip. Yeah, because I feel like, I just look at glass and I have a cut.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I bought some gloves from like Home Depot or Lowe's just for when I'm grinding.
The thin, like just nitrile. I like the black because it's chic.
Yeah, right. Because most of them are like, I'm like, who chose these colors? Can somebody like make some cool gloves, please?
I know.
But when people go to your Instagram, I feel like you have a very distinctive style, right? So you found like the look of your pieces. And that kind of gets me to my next question about marketing. Do you have any marketing tips for people? Because I feel like your Instagram, there's a really good flow to it, but then you're also like telling people like, hey, buy these pieces. And so I feel like a lot of artists struggle with that. Like, how do you effectively market on Instagram?
Dude, it is not easy. I've been thinking about, I've taught a class on this recently with Urban Glass and I was really intimidated by the concept of it, even though like I would ask me if I were not me how I do it. I don't think it was like, it's only natural and in my nature because I made it up when I had that vintage shop. Instagram started in 2011, which is the year I opened the store. And I saw Instagram and I was like, cool. Like we're just sharing a picture. Okay. Like I take pictures all day. That is a thing about me. Like I studied photo, like of all the crap that I do, not the crap, of all the wonderful, talented things I've got going on, lift up, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Like the photography or just like capturing beautiful moments, that is deeply ingrained in me. I didn't know I was a creative in a visual way until college. And then when I found it, I was just like, oh my God, taking pictures makes me feel so happy. So I grew up with Instagram. Like I learned how to run businesses and do Instagram at the same time. And the key is making it, I don't want to go too into it because at this point, it's a semi-toxic situation as well, because now it's always kind of messed with people, but the comparison aspect and being focused on numbers and not working for yourself, but trying to manipulate your vision so that people can buy your things. Of all the things I can say about Instagram, it's that like you making imagery about your work needs to bring you some element of joy. It doesn't. It's gonna suck, and everyone is gonna feel it, and you're gonna hate it. That you like, figure out how to make imagery that like you like, and if you can't do it, then hire someone to do it. Spend that little bit of money on someone making some imagery for you. I know as a person who loves doing that there has been so many times in my life where I've offered to take photos for my friends. Find your photo friend,
right?
In your life. We all have them. And offer to buy them some coffee or a pizza or a dinner or something, and then bring your objects to them and be like, "Look, how can you take pictures of this in a way that like lets these objects shine?" I happen to have that skill. It didn't come super naturally, but I developed it because I saw that people respond better to like this authentic expression of creativity and play. And yeah, I make stained glass. I'm not an illustrator, so I have to figure out the designs, but I make these objects and then I play with them in the imagery, which is why that how it translates is a little more interesting than just an object on a wall. But I still post those kinds of things too. Yeah, it depends on what like story you're telling with your work, but the play is just it's so important. If you're
Yeah,
not
because people
you're not
feel it.
if you're not feeling you getting a little bit of joy out of making those images and sharing them, then it's just wasted energy. If it's not for you,
Yeah.
find someone else to do it for you, and we know that we have to do it. So either make that a priority and make that a place where you have to do either some spending or some trades, and then maybe eventually you'll grow to understand how to capture these objects in a way that is like bringing them life and perspective for just other people to look at. Think about it as I need people. Marketing is all some version of manipulation, which is super unfortunate.
But it's like it's just part of it, part of selling anything, right?
It's a part of capitalism.
Right.
I mean, it is. It's just us trying to float to the surface of everyone's consciousness and demand attention. And it can be super soul sucking. So if you're not having fun while doing it,
that's right. And
you're missing at least one opportunity to have a creative moment. And for the most part, whenever I share anything, the picture I'm taking, I'm like, I like that. I actually like that.
This is beautiful. I love how the light is shining through the glass. I want to share this with my community. Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out new like alternative ways of looking at stuff. I love I moved into this new apartment, which I manifested after I was ill here. And I knew that I wanted a white surface and I wanted like a sunbeam on the white surface, because if you look through a piece with direct sunlight, you see the shadows of the color and of the color of the glass. And I was like, there's something magical there. I want to be able to share that. So I have a white table in the right exact place for when the sun comes at 3:40 each day, 3:44. And I have like papers and like little fabrics and some felt shapes and stuff that I'll bring out if I am taking a picture of an object and it's fallen flat. How can I make it cuter? Put a plant in there, whatever.
I know, yeah. I feel like you put a plant in a photo and then it just like it instantly gets upgraded, right? It just adds that little extra.
Yeah. It's weirdly human to see life in the arrangement of just like obscure objects.
So for me, taking these classes, I'm a kind of a graphic designer by trade, so I know the Adobe software, so I just use Illustrator and I'm like, okay, here's like a pattern. But for people who don't have a like traditional design background, do you use something else to figure out your patterns?
No, girl, I draw by hand like a kindergartner.
Oh, wow. And then you just photocopy your drawing, I guess, to cut it out or whatever.
My process is as such. At this point, I have just like a myriad of paper shapes that I've made. Like I have a bunch of circles and arches and anything that I might use. Because for a while I was making these mobiles that are just like glass shapes. And so I had to find just on like Google, clip art, some arch shapes. So I'd print those out. And I just printed out a bunch of different shapes. And I use those in making designs. But I have a big paper, like nice paper, just pad, and I'll take a big sheet out, and depending on how big of a size I want, I'll take those shapes out and I'll help myself make arches with just paper and a ruler and graph paper. I will say that I have probably given like 25 to 30% of my brain to an Illustrator class once or twice, and just been like,
you're like, no,
this is a language I'm just like not ready to learn yet. But honestly, my work would benefit so much if I just figured it out. I've briefly thought about getting like an iPad and Procreate.
Oh yeah, Procreate is nice.
That might have Illustrator does not feel intuitive.
I think you would like Procreate though.
Right? Like, since I'm already drawing a little.
Right. Correct.
It fix the drawing, right?
Yeah. And it'll be in digital form, but I feel like it's just like drawing, but digitally. And it's because I love Procreate too. It's just easier and it's more natural.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But right now I'm literally drawing stuff with with paper and pencil. I have a whole box of pencils and fancy erasers, and I'll just draw it, and then when I'm done, I'll just cut it out. That's my template. I never make a copy of it because I'm a fool. And I keep all those pieces in like plastic, like binder folders. So I have I can replicate
Mm.
it anytime. A new thing I in the lead class I'm in, the teacher Laura, she always cuts from patterns, so she'll put the paper on the glass and cut out on with the paper. And I've never done that before. This is literally the first time I've been drawing it on the glass this whole time.
Oh,
Um,
because yeah, that's why my teacher right now has me glue it to the glass.
it's like different for everybody.
So you
And like
use the Sharpie.
I've been using a Sharpie forever, and I just need a piece to be really tight. I'll make sure and cut on the inside line of the Sharpie exactly where the paper is.
Ah,
So I'm
okay.
literally trying to replicate the exact shape of the paper because that is the stencil. But for the most part, everything I'm making, even if it has a little bit of fluff or even if it gets a little bigger because I don't grind well or cut well, I just don't care. Like
Mm.
I'm still spending so many hours on this. It is a handmade thing. There's just only so much I can do to things I'm making are looking good. They're looking fine.
Well, question for you because what's your school of thought on pricing? I was following, I forgot what his name is, another person in the stained glass place, and he was saying,
Pizza donkey.
yes. I don't know if you like saw his video,
Yeah.
but it was like basically saying don't underprice yourself, right? And so, how
It's hard.
did you figure out what your pricing is? Because glass is expensive. It does take a long time, even for a smaller design, right? And then
Yeah.
so many people do see these manufactured pieces of glass that weren't handmade, and they're like, "Oh, this should be $10," and it's like, this is
Yeah.
handmade, so this should be like $150.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Well,
how do you navigate that?
it's first of all, it's like all an experiment. I watch people sell things for two pieces of glass, done some fancy work to them, and then they're like $190. And then I'll see work like mine that like my portals that are 150 now. When I first started Soft Shapes, I had made these portals like a year or two ago, and they had been sitting in a gallery store, and no one
Mm.
had bought one at all. There was no interest in them. They were in there for a whole year, so I just thought they were a dud product. And then when I opened up Soft Shapes, I had 8 of them, and they sold out in a few minutes, which was part of the marketing of just like getting everyone really excited. A big launch of a new brand is like an amazing time to just have a lot of product. But after I saw
Mm-hmm.
the need and the desire of those objects, I slowly started making them and raising the price to the point where I felt like if someone bought it, I felt good about it. There was
Mm-hmm.
a time in my life where I was making these floral iPhone cases with resin, and they were honestly so beautiful. Like they were beautiful. I was very good at this thing, and RIP resin floral phone cases because resin is like so toxic. I'm like very sensitive to chemicals now because of it. But
Yeah.
those cases in like 2013, the most I could sell them for was like $30, and they took 4 days. And every time
Yeah.
I would buy one, I would feel like, ugh, I have to make something for $30 that takes me 4 days. So
Yeah.
goal now for this work is that anytime I sell or see something sold in my email, that I don't feel that gut feeling. So I feel around 150 is exactly right for the portal mirrors because I don't know if you've done anything with mirrors, but like treating mirrors.
Not yet, but I heard you got to be so careful because you can get mirror rot and this. And I
Yeah,
was like, oh, I'm nervous. I'm
yeah,
nervous about
yeah. So
this.
like the treatment that's included there, and also I'm pretty good at cutting, but I'm cutting like a really pretty skinny part on a big sheet of glass. So I'm using a lot of glass.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I just make excuses for any of this, but when someone buys the portals, I feel like I see that number and I'm like, that feels worth this work. So when I'm making bigger pieces, I'm trying to think, I've been making smaller pieces to try and bring people down to regular. I make these big flowers that are like $200. So I started
Mm.
making smaller ones that are
Ah,
going to be like one or 95, not 195, but 95. So I'm
yeah, that's pretty.
this is a lot of pieces. I had a friend who does stained glass whose rule of thumb is like each piece should be $15.
Yeah, because I've seen where people do that by the like price by the piece too. Okay.
And this is definitely not $15 per piece, but I feel because of its size, and I feel 95 is about as high as I would want to go. But it's so cute. And I'm trying like different colors out. Look at this pink.
Oh wow. Yeah, and that's gonna look very beautiful. And definitely if you have any pictures on your Instagram, people, I'll make sure to include them on the show notes because these pieces will look gorgeous kind of hanging up like right
I'll,
outside your
I'll be
window.
posting some little flowers next week, but it's really an experiment. I would say I love to look around at all the people that I super respect in stained glass. Whenever they have a shop launch, which everyone does all the time, I'll go to their website and be like, how much are they charging for that 8.5 by 11 LED panel? And I'm like, that thing is $590. Okay, so people are buying that, and yeah, their following is much bigger, but I love that they are getting paid that for this work that they're putting effort into. Like I need to be holding myself at that standard as well.
Yeah.
I want to charge enough for me to live is really also the concept. Like void of whatever I am comparing myself to.
Mm-hmm.
No one's living my life with like my debts, with my loans, with my what my bills are. So apart from
Mm-hmm.
materials and things, like what will make me feel safe is also deeply rooted in the pricing of pieces.
You said like these could potentially be heirlooms because these things can last forever if people take care of them right. And
Forever.
there is a
Forever.
lot of love, attention, and detail coming in. I had to
Yeah.
like wire wrap this one piece. Oh my God, I think I like burned my fingertips like a million times because that little wire gets hot. I'm like,
Dude,
people don't understand.
I know. I
It took
know.
me weeks to finish this one piece, like 4 weeks.
Yeah. Oh, God. It's true.
Yeah.
And I don't even think about that. It's so easy to write off. Like when I talk about it now, and people ask what I do, or maybe if people in my brain ask that, I'm like, how do I respond? I'm a stained glass designer. It's such like an arbitrary, strange thing to say. And then I'm like, no, I literally have like cuts on my hands every day. I pay attention to all these curves and I'm thoughtful about every single thing that I'm making. I'm like really putting myself into. It's like that might not translate to anyone who doesn't know anything about glass or anyone who has not seen my objects, but for the people who like see it, I'm hoping that they get it. They have
Yeah.
these small things, but people are throwing mugs full time and you're using a mug every day and it's like a part of your house and a part of your life. It's a part of your visual story that you are either choosing or not choosing in your world, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I just rambled.
Mm. No, this is good stuff. Okay, so before I get to the wrap up questions, one last thing, and this kind of like even comes up in some of the classes I've taken. So for me, like I'm in a 2 bedroom apartment. And so really I take classes at my local kind of art place because I'm like, where else am I going to make it? Because the glass is so messy. And then with the soldering, even though I do have the little, what is it, the diffuser or whatever it is. So how do you make it work in your space? Because I keep like looking at my room and I'm just like, will I ever be able to do it in my apartment or do you really need to have a studio to do a lot of work?
I mean, because I'm in New York and because of the amount of money that you're paying per square foot here, it's a reason why I lived up in the Bronx for so long because I could afford to have both a room and a studio. I, during COVID, when I moved all my stuff into my bedroom, so had stuff in my mom's garage for a while and then I moved it all back when I decided to come back to New York in September. I had to work on a 2x4 plastic standing table. I also made all of the things that have been made in soft shapes, probably 140 things on a
Mm,
2x4 table in my bedroom in the safest way that I can, like near a window with a fume box, with lead wipes and like plastic tarping for the grinding. I have a particular pair of shoes that I wear in the space only. I am vacuuming and sweeping as much as I can. I have 3 pairs of tweezers for anytime glass gets caught in my skin, which is occasionally. I have like boxes of gloves. I have 2 different respirators. I wear goggles on top of my glasses. I'm doing everything I can to keep myself and the air quality safe. I've been thinking about
Mm.
getting a nice air purifier or I don't know what
Oh
those are.
yeah.
Cleaners is
Yeah.
legal. I was talking to the lead teacher, and she's definitely like, you definitely shouldn't do it in your room. But this is a huge space. It's not like a normal bedroom. It's very far in the corner, and it's right near a window. And I'm doing as much as I can in my control. I also have like really enjoyed the rolling out of bed into the studio
It's
moment
like
that
right there.
like COVID gave that to me. I in New York, when you leave your house, it's a whole adventure just getting somewhere. Like
Right.
the train to getting on the train. There's so many things that could, mess up your mood. I joyously found that I don't have to deal with anybody. I just am in here. I have like my own entrance to this room. I think it was 2 rooms originally, and it has since been opened, and so there's a lot of space in here. But I would just say take as many precautions as you can if you're doing it in your space. I have made it
Mm.
work on again a 2x4. Is it 2x4? Yeah, 4x2 like standing table. I have done every
Mm.
process like instead of I'll cut everything for the week and then I'll clean all of it up, all the glass everywhere, on the floor, everywhere, and then I will get ready to grind and I'll put plastic tarp up, like just a Home Depot plastic sheet thing that you can toss because those particles get all over it. I wear a grinder when I
Yeah.
grind, or a respirator when I grind, goggles over my glasses, and I like stay in the bubble while I'm grinding, making sure everything's good. I make sure to dip all my pieces in water before I move them out of that space so that any
Mm.
can be washed off. And then as soon as I'm done grinding, I clean the grinder of everything I can. I clean that grinder all the time. There's never piles of dust in any form in this room. And then I take that
Mm.
water and I save all of it in like bottles of that are like closed. And then eventually I take them to a glass distributor to throw away and in like a proper place. And then I would clean the table again, clean the floor, wipe everything down from glass dust potentially, because that silica will literally just sit in your lungs for your whole life. It doesn't leave.
Mm.
And then I solder. I put down new paper, gloves, respirator, goggles. I'll open the window, have a box fan, plus the fume sucker. I don't know what that's called.
Mm-hmm.
Fume box.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That
And
thing.
then I'll just go in and try to get everything done. And then I wash everything with Dove soap with a toothbrush and 2 different sponges. I make sure everything's clean. And I have a separate area. I have a separate like box of all of my linens or towels that I use for cleaning and polishing, and everything that touches lead is in its own safe, like airtight situation. So I'm doing the best I can because I want to live a long life. But
Right.
the world is already poisonous.
Right. Why
You
put
know,
yourself in more risk?
I do feel like these objects bring me joy. So sometimes you just have to
Just
try
go with it. I know. And I saw there's like the 3M respirator, but I saw like a picture of you and I was like, wow, her respirator looks like modern and cool because it was like a white one. Where'd you find that? What's that one called? Is that by 3M too?
I don't know what all the respirators I have are for fumes and
Yeah.
particles. So there are different types of respirators that are like just for like particles, but for lead and for like the flux burns and it's a fume. And before
Yeah.
I knew better, I would get headaches. I would get headaches all the time when I was like in my studio or taking a class. So I'm very cautious about that because I'm particularly sensitive, but it can't be good if my head is literally hurting from a fume. I
Yeah.
think I just like Googled fume and particle respirator, and then I got one that was like smaller. That instead of it being
Mm,
like, so big on my
like this
face,
gigantic, yeah.
I have like 2 of those because I used to wear them when I would work in resin. So I feel very like comfortable in the respirator space, but I get these crazy rashes if I don't keep them clean. So you also have respirator wipes that I have. But
Nice.
I don't know. I don't want to support Bezos, but you could just check on Amazon. That's affordability and accessibility is a huge part of all of this as well. And
It is.
if the way that you can have these resources is like being like spending less, then I don't, who am I to judge? I also
Yeah.
am living in New York trying to like make it happen in her freaking bedroom. Like,
Right. Right.
you can't
Well,
pick and choose.
yes, yes. Oh my God, this is good. Love it. Okay, a few just couple quick wrap up questions. How do you stay organized? Any tools, software, or techniques that you would recommend for people?
I'm not doing anything software wise because I don't do anything digitally apart besides like taking pictures. So on my phone, my main digital work is every picture that you see on the website everywhere is all from my phone. So I
Mm,
barely use my fancy camera, which I have one and can do, but it's just adding another step that I don't need because also these objects just live for a while on a place and then sell, hopefully.
mm,
I will suggest that if you have a studio space, I had a teacher or a friend that always, a florist that always talked about always be knolling. Knolling is just like consistently cleaning the space up and not having like shards of glass everywhere, not having like beads of lead, not having like residual flux on the table because you don't know what you're going to put down that might have a shard underneath of it, or you might put down a mirror and there's flux underneath on the table or something. So like consistently cleaning and tidying up the space and during each process that you're in,
mm.
that is like a huge gift. And I have to do that because I'm still working on a 4x2 table, plus I added a standing desk. So there was like a little L-shaped situation over there. um, I'm still always on the hunt of trying to figure out how to manage all the scraps and the different size scraps. And I work in both transparent and opalescent, not usually together, but color coordinating. I have
Oh
yet
yeah.
to really get that down, but I have the flat file situation that I got from IKEA, and then a tin giant drawer that has like 8 or drawers that I put like colors and stuff in. So that helps keep things easier. And I guess I have a cart that has all my bad stuff on it, like all my lead things, and I keep that under a tarp occasionally. And
Mm.
keeping all of your solder and things in a airtight bin, like even your solder. There's pools of thought that like solder has like lead particles, or just lead has lead particles that float in the air, and it is very small the amount of research that is in support of lead coming in, you breathing lead in. Like main problem with lead is you ingesting it, like having it on your hands.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just keeping it tidy. These are bad things.
Right. Right. Right.
But I also will say I've been taught by people who have been doing it for 40 years with smoking cigarettes the whole time. Like,
Right. And they're like living to 70,
they're
80.
just chilling. So
No,
we're doing the best we can.
no. And then when you're not doing stained glass, do you have a hobby?
I would say taking pictures is the hobby. I love
Mm.
I love capturing moments, and I used to feel much more safe and comfortable posting on Instagram, but I got trolled last year, and I haven't made a comeback yet. So
Oh.
also,
Mm.
I feel like people are like my friends. I was probably the last one of all my friends to start feeling unhealthy on Instagram, and that
Mm.
also happened for me last year. And I got a good solid like 10 years of like joyful posting before I started feeling like the existential dread and the comparing and the worried about what people are thinking. And I hate that for me, and I hate that for us because it
Yeah.
like
Like
place
fun.
play, So I'm
Yeah.
trying to let that go, or just decide that I don't have to let it go. Like that maybe that just isn't something I like to do anymore. But I still take a lot of photos. I like to decorate, I guess, but I guess stained glass, and I love eating treats. I don't know if that's a hobby, but
Right. But it's good. It's delicious.
I love, I love, I love the treat. The treat. I love fun little cocktails. Living in New York, like I'm glad that things are at least a little bit normal, so that I can absorb as much glamour and treats as I can for now.
Yeah.
Hopefully it continues, but it's really expensive to do that here.
Right. I know, right? No, I get you. I'm in DC, so it's the same thing. It's ooh, how much is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, oh my god.
How
Like
much
I
is
bought
that
myself
croissant?
a
It's
donut
like
this morning.
$50. Nice. But they're just always so good. I even got this little, it's called a harissa, and it's this little croissant with like an egg in the middle, and it's so delicious. I
So
treat myself
good.
once a week to it.
I have like no shame on it. That's why a girl got to charge a lot of money because she needs a lot of treats.
Right. Got paid for them treats. And then please just tell the listeners where to find you. If you're doing any, classes that you would like to promote, anything like that, please let them know.
Awesome. I am a educator at Urban Glass in Brooklyn, New York, as well as Craftsman Ave in Gowanus in Brooklyn. I also teach private stained glass lessons all over the greater New York City area, where I drive to your house or you can come to mine. I set up a whole situation, and that is super fun. You can reach me at Soft Shapes. That's my Instagram, soft_shapes. And my website is softshapes.me, M-E. Someone had softshapes.com. So I was like, well, I am soft, so softshapes.me is funny and clever and exactly right.
Nice. Well,
Yeah,
perfect. Kelsie, this has been a pleasure. Thanks for sharing all the things. Really, really appreciate it. And I can't wait to put this out to the world.
oh my God. Thank you so much for pinning me down.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. And Kelsie, just thanks again for sharing your story. In particular, the first portion of the conversation that was just discussing mental health. I think it is a conversation that more of us need to have on different platforms because people need to know that they are not alone. So, Kelsie, thank you, thank you, thank you for sharing it. Also, I hope you guys just got out of this episode that you need to do what makes you happy. Like, you don't want to do anything that's icky, especially when it comes to marketing and social media. And so, there is a fine, like, line there and there's a balance, but do what's right for you. But regardless, just be consistent, be creative. The last episode of this season is coming up next week with LaKay and I. We're talking about goals and home ownership. So please make sure you chime in to episode 139. Then I will take, of course, a little bit of a break and be back in the fall. So anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So please hit me up on Instagram or hello@nachesnow.com. And of course, if you want to check Kelsie out, definitely go over to her Instagram because her work is absolutely beautiful, soft shapes. And if you want to see the beginnings of my work, it's over at Creative Route on Instagram. All right, you guys, have a good one, and I will chat with you all next week.